long till I saw that depending on other people to make them was a lost cause. I mean, it was always some excuse and you couldn't get anything coordinated. So I leased one little semi-automatic encapsulating machine. In the meantime, I'd moved from Charlotte to out here in the country. The guy had this property, divorced, and his wife left him and he was losing it. And the guy was here with his clipboard taking this property from him. And I just moved in and took over the payments. Then I started building, and you know, later on here, started out in my basement. But it just spontaneously grew. I didn't plan to get into it. It just was dumped in my lap. And then I started paying royalties to Doc. And 6 months later, the woman who was his secretary, and I'll not mention her name, but anyway, she was pushing us. We was paying him 50 cents a bottle. Now on wholesale, on a lot of stuff, that's almost all your profit. But anyway, she was pushing us to go to $1 a bottle. And I called Doc, and he was, I didn't know I was getting any wrong, you know. And he broke down and cried, just lost it.
Yeah.
And a week later, the woman no longer was employed with him. And he came down here shortly thereafter, and it was kind of a sad thing. He had that happen to him over and over and over. Thought he had a real confidential friend, and they were bleeding him. Yeah. And that happened so many times. But Doc was a very forgiving and kind person. He would not. He always gave you the benefit of the doubt until you proved otherwise, you know. And he was too forgiving, because he would just, they hung around him like flies around honey to bleed him. I mean, I just saw it happen over and over again. And I saw one woman, well, I didn't see it, I heard it on tape, hand him a check for over $100,000, one clip. And it was on audio, but he didn't get to spend it. It was all calmed out away from him before he knew what happened.
Agreed.
And he died broke. And yet he took in fabulous amounts of money, but the leeches that surrounded him were all greedy, like the girl accused me of being greedy. But I paid my royalties. I'll show you all the checks. I got every check. Royalty check I paid him here, and plus checks for this and checks for that. And I don't have the checks that I paid these private nurses and the funeral home and all of this and that. I don't know, they were filed under a different category somewhere. But and I promised him on his deathbed that I'd see that his little girl, he had a 1-year-old or something when he died.
That's Stephanie, yeah.
And that I would see that she didn't suffer, or, you know, and I continued paying for 20 more years on that. Not under any obligation, all voluntary. He never ever asked me for a royalty or for anything. Doc never once asked me for a dime for anything. And everything I paid was just voluntary. But I've been accused, another famous woman who I won't mention, who's still yakking, and I see her name pop up on the internet there, just a year or so ago. She was yakking how I took advantage of Doc and stole his formulas and blah blah blah. And I says, and her husband's not so mouthy, he's a pretty nice guy. I said, just call Bonnie and ask her. And he called Bonnie, Doc's wife, and she told him that I'd been paying them money for 20 years. And I did get an apology from them.
Really? They apologized?
Yeah.
Were the initials JW there anywhere?
Huh?
Was the initial JW?
Mine?
No. The woman that was accusing you of these things was...
Not June Wild, no.
It was not June.
No.
It was somebody else.
She's down in Arkansas or somewhere. But
is she in Missouri?
Huh?
Is she in Missouri?
Maybe somewhere down in the hillbilly country. I don't remember. I don't keep track of people and stuff. And
okay. I'm just trying to tie loose ends together.
My business is to make food supplements, and all this psychological baloney I don't get involved in.